Borderlands 4's road to release has been one of chaos. From the infamous $80 USD price backlash to the mass review bombing of older Borderlands titles to the silencing of community spokespeople and the criticism from competitors, Borderlands 4's road to release has been a story of persistent controversy. While not the only source of contention, you can't marry controversy to Borderlands without the incomprehensible Randy Pitchford. Founder, president, and CEO of Gearbox Software, Randy's $80 price tweet was just one of a long list of controversies he's been embroiled with over the last 12 months. Telling fans to go f*** themselves and comparing the price of competitor games to the cost of illicit drugs are just the tip of the iceberg. This is the story of Borderlands 4's chaotic release. On the 21st of August 2024, Gearbox Software, the developers of the Borderlands franchise, bequeathed unto the fanbase a new teaser trailer. Borderlands 4 was potentially coming as soon as 2025, a new mainline game, the first to be released since Borderlands 3 launched in September of 2019. Hot off the heels of its acquisition from its now parent company Take-Two Interactive, Borderlands 4 was heralding a new age for the franchise, or at least that was the plan. Somewhat overshadowed by the incredibly poor reception to the Borderlands movie released on the 9th of August 2024, Borderlands 4 was more than likely expected to ride the wave of new fans and renewed interest in the series in a similar fashion to Bethesda's Fallout TV show that was released earlier that same year. Despite including some incredible talent, the movie was universally despised from fans and, well, basically everyone. Fans of the franchise were bewildered by the complete disconnect of the movie from its source material, including questionable casting choices like Kevin Hart as Roland, which was the equivalent of casting Jack Black as Joel from The Last of Us.
Don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
Five Nights at Freddy's, that's where I wanna be. Five Nights at Freddy's.
Borderlands 4's reveal was somewhat more mixed than Gearbox were expecting. With mostly positive reactions, there was still a pervasive undertone of skepticism across the gaming community owing to the perception that the franchise had become a little bit stale with time. The words, "it's just more Borderlands," a low rumble across social media. Many were citing the game's perceived downturn in writing quality in Borderlands 3 as a fault to be corrected, but not everyone felt this way, obviously. The games had fostered a very dedicated fan base over the years, some spending hundreds if not thousands of hours in the wastes of Pandora and the many other diverse locations across the universe of the games. But a pervasive criticism of Borderlands 3 was its lack of proper innovation from its predecessors, and obviously also the decrease in its writing quality, meaning the fourth installment was carrying the weight of expectation of a new refresh for the series. The pressure to perform was clearly one that the developers at Gearbox were feeling through the remainder of 2024 and into 2025. The discourse continued to circulate with a theme of hesitation. Dedicated fans were incredibly positive, spreading lore and game theories and discussing ideas of what they'd like to see in the next iteration. However, the broader discourse around the game was a mite less positive, citing a distrust of Gearbox after Borderlands 3 and the aforementioned stagnation that the franchise had been experiencing, rightly or wrongly culminating in a perception that the developer cared very little for the future of the games outside of its commercial value. Thus, Gearbox were feeling the heat, but no one was feeling it more than our main man, Randy Pitchford. Now, Randy is by no means new to controversy, fleeting memories of a bygone era with promiscuous magicians performing erotic tricks captured on a company USB stick still in the back of the community's minds. This, amongst many other memorable moments, meant that old Randy was not just accustomed, but almost an auteur of controversy at this point in time, earning himself the community nicknames Randy Pitchfork or the Grease Man. In the wake of the release trailer on February 13th, 2025, prominent content creator Mitsu took to Twitter to express his concerns over the forthcoming launch of Borderlands 4. I'm a humble man, for I just comment on the things I see. I really worry about Borderlands 4. For me, I've yet to see anything that moved me towards being sold on this being a fully conceptualized, completed vision about what a mainline Borderlands title of the future should look like. It still looks too much like 3. The thread continued with Mitsu discussing Borderlands 4 in the context of the current gaming industry, feeling that a looter shooter may feel like a dime a dozen in the current landscape with live service games dominating the space, which of course, Borderlands 4 is not. Boiling up over the disappointing discourse that Borderlands 4 was experiencing from the gaming community, Randy Pitchford's emotions had hit a point of no return, leading to this response. Sorry, don't need this energy right now as the team and I bust our ass to make Borderlands 4 the best Borderlands game yet. I'm going to block you in a day or so after you've had a chance to see this. Nothing against you or your opinion, just shouldn't expose myself to this now. Sorry. Oops, I guess I can just mute you. Doing that now. I hope I remember to unmute when we're done. If you see me, please remind me. No block. Again, sorry, nothing against you. Now, for the average person, a decision to remove negative sentiment from your life as a means of protecting your mental health is, all things considered, a reasonably good choice. But Randy wasn't the average person. He was the founder, president, and CEO of Gearbox, making a public statement against a figure in the media, muting them at what was a fairly reasonable and mild criticism. On its own, it wasn't a great look, but it got worse. In response to Randy's public muting of a critic, the well-known Twitch streamer and audience director of Midwest Games, Gothalion, came out in defense of Mitsu. I spoke on this on stream, but should have said something here. @Mitsu Show loves Borderlands and gave some very valid concerns, mild takes really, about Borderlands 4. Hate to see Duval Magic, Randy Pitchford, mute him as a result. Publicly. Homie, this guy is a long-time supporter. His critique came from a place of love, as will mine. Please reconsider. Do better. Make a great Borderlands, and when your longest-lasting, biggest supporters give feedback and worries, especially respectful, digest it gracefully. Hoping Borderlands 4 bangs. Once again, a very professionally written and respectful criticism of Randy's public statement, which for most people would likely warrant some self-reflection. Not for Randy. I didn't see critique, I just saw shitty negativity that was demotivating. Want the best Borderlands? Root for us and cheer us on. If you take developers' passion for granted, we'll all pay the price. I love criticism, and thankfully, I have never been in short supply. Don't gaslight me on this post. It wasn't criticism, it was pessimism. It's toxic for people killing themselves for your entertainment, so f that noise. Keep in mind, this man is the CEO representing a very large company, and his actions translate to the public perception of that company's stability and the subsequent trust that consumers have in its brand. So fair to say, Randy was in a fairly unstable state, or perhaps his normal state of instability. But this outburst was just the beginning. Only a couple of months later, on May 1st of 2025, Borderlands 4 was given its own dedicated gameplay deep dive. The in-depth video did actually a reasonably good job of assuaging some of the hesitation and fear that fence-sitting fans were feeling. It also allowed the community to see what Randy Pitchford would look like cosplaying as a Persian rug. New diverse characters with deep skill trees, coherently flowing traversal mechanics including grappling hooks and gliding, an impressively large semi-open world to explore, new intriguing and intimidating bosses, and of course, copious amounts of guns. It would also include major quality of life features such as cross-play at launch and a variety of co-op multiplayer options, even couch co-op, which is a rarefied treat in modern gaming. Needless to say, the deep dive had moved the needle of public perception towards interest and excitement for the forthcoming release. Only 2 weeks later, on the 14th of May, Nintendo announced some further good news. Borderlands 4 would also be coming to the Switch 2, enabling fans in that ecosystem to enjoy the next title. Capitalizing on this renewed fan anticipation, Randy posted his personal excitement for the Nintendo release. A fairly innocuous and positive action for an executive of his station in the company. However, during this period, Nintendo had come under fire for their trailblazing $80 USD pricing of the new Mario Kart World, a signpost of either a troubled economy increasing the price of game development, or rather more upsettingly, a representation of corporate greed during a time of economic difficulty. Fans were fearing that this pricing strategy would start to catch on, especially in the wake of Microsoft's recent support of this new pricing level for The Outer Worlds 2. This anxiety would lead Twitter user Jemmy J. Coiner to bluntly respond to Randy's tweet with the following. Randy, this game better not be $80. Don't take the risk. A lot of gamers aren't going to pay $80 and feed this notion of constant increase of the price tag. You are the CEO, you have some say with the price when it comes to your publisher. Randy's response needs little introduction. A, not my call. B, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991, when I was just out of high school, working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen. It goes without saying that from the CEO of Gearbox in a time of economic crisis, this statement was the definition of tone deaf. In response, fans were furious. This has to be one of the worst CEO replies from recent memory. You are beyond cooked, man. Congratulations, you single-handedly revived AAA piracy. Pitchforks and torches were raised across the internet. Randy's statement, reaching out to the popular games media and receiving widespread condemnation from fans, brands, and industry figures alike.
The video game industry is marching towards $80 price tags for new titles, and Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford thinks you'd better start saving your pennies if you want to consider yourself a true fan of his game.
Michael Dowse, the publishing director at Larian Studios, the developer of the incredible Baldur's Gate 3, came out in public opposition to Randy's statement, condemning the quote that real fans will find a way, when many could not afford such a high price in a cost of living crisis. The notable publisher Devolver Digital also took a shot, promoting their new game Mycopunk that had drawn comparisons to Borderlands due to its cel-shaded aesthetic. You're going to be able to buy Mycopunk for you and 3 of your friends for the price of 1 copy of Borderlands 4, to which Randy responded with one of the most incomprehensible tweets imaginable. Mycopunk is cheaper than a point of meth, probably has fewer side effects too. During this controversy, Randy had made an appearance at PAX East, and in reaction to the uproar, Randy was asked this by the host.
What will the game's price be? That's an interesting one. I don't know this.
The price, really, now? I'll tell you the truth. I don't know. But we want everyone who buys and plays a Gearbox game to feel certain that they got the better end of the bargain. Whatever the price is, that they got the best value. And that's the philosophy that we live by.
This response was not one that permeated very far beyond those either in attendance at the event or the core Borderlands community. In spite of his attempt to set the record straight, stones continued to be hurled at the eclectic CEO. Being a man that wears his heart on his sleeve, his outlet of Twitter would be where he'd express his pent-up frustration. On the 28th of May, 2 weeks into the online backlash, Randy had once again found himself at the center of controversy. Who would have thought? This time for retweeting an AI-generated video. Now apparently, because I quote tweeted an AI goop fever dream of insanity, I must have been fooled by it, which is, by the way, the worst crime imaginable. But somehow also must be signaling that I'm down for using AI for video games, and somehow also must be a horrible person that cannot be trusted with Twitter, or, you know, any of the creativity I am actually responsible for that brings any of these people to even know who I am in the first place, so they can give 2 shits about what goofy ass video I might be sharing while I sit on the toilet with my phone. I mean, thanks for playing my games and thanks for the engagement and all that, but boy howdy, some of you really need to find some perspective and chill the F out. At Grok, can you just automatically block everyone in my replies who is a shithead? Anyway, here's the real shit. Never read the comments. In response, some reactors expressed genuine concern over Randy's mental health rather than further brigading, and it would be only a day later that Randy finally conceded an apology. I am sorry. There was a misunderstanding. The absolute sincere truth is that I don't want anyone to pay any more than they should or are comfortable with, and I always work with the intent and hope that a customer always feels they got the better end of the deal no matter what they pay. The actual context was that a guy replied to a post about Borderlands 4 on the Nintendo Switch 2 was warning me that if the price ends up being $80, the game will fail. What I was trying to do was explain that it wasn't my call, but that if a $10 price increase does happen, since that's obviously where the industry is going, it will be okay. And that Borderlands 4 will be okay, because it's a great game, and there are a lot of fans who will see the value and want it. I think my trying to shorthand that using the phrase real fans triggered some people, and I saw that it got inflated as if I was making some big statement. I wasn't. I was just trying to help someone who I thought was sincerely worried about us and looking out for us. And I could see that it was being pressed into the idea that I was taking the audience for granted, which is a super shitty look, but it was not at all my intent and does not reflect at all how I feel. This quote is only about half of the entire post, but I'll spare you the pain of listening to the rest. Fans were mostly quite negative towards the apology. Whether a post with sincerity or a PR decision to quell the enormous backlash, it served very little to halt the rushing tide of condemnation. Some fans were steadfast in their initial reactions, promising to boycott the game, and others, well, they really just wanted Randy to stop tweeting. So the hate train chugged on for another few weeks until on June 16th, the true price of the game was finally revealed, $70 USD, which was in conflict with the speculation born from Randy's infamous tweet. The inference was that the uproar from fans may have caused 2K to consider lowering the price to avoid further controversy. After all, statements of a boycott from fans were being thrown around very consistently anytime the topic was raised. However, it was pointed out from the same Larian director from earlier, Michael Dowse, that this was more than likely strategic to lower the barrier to entry for players given its multiplayer focus. At the end of the day, it was all speculation, and the drama surrounding the discussion could have very well contributed to the decision for all we know. Sales appear to be at the top top of everyone's minds as the $70 announcement became the talking point of Borderlands discourse online. Along with the announcement, several editions of the game were revealed that offered varying degrees of content for a higher price point, as is reasonably customary for AAA games these days. These were the standard, deluxe, and super deluxe editions, ranging from $70 up to $130 USD. Each of these came from various packs that included cosmetic items like Vault Hunter skins, and then some included content like new missions, areas, and also unique bosses. The latter only available in the deluxe and super deluxe editions. So to get access to all the playable content on launch day, you were looking at a minimum price of $100 USD, which came with its own disapproval from fans. However, there was also the $150 Echo 4 bundle, or as Randy and 2K would call it, the collector's edition, which included a range of physical merchandise and no game. This error was very quickly pointed out by fans, only for Gearbox to correct the blunder, noting that the bundle was mislabeled by Randy in the GameStop website. Reactions from fans showed that all the exhaustion was beginning to pile up, adding a flavor of confusion to the already mile-high mountain of resentment. Now, unless you're aware of the historic antics of Randy Pitchford, you may think that these scandals would be enough to convince him to put down the phone and take a break from social media until the game was released. That is not his way. On June 27th, as a means of marketing the game, Borderlands 3 went on sale for a staggering 95% off, giving new or returning fans of the franchise an opportunity to try before you buy. Enter Randy. Sales like this and Borderlands 3 showing up on console subscription programs took over 5 years from the game's launch to happen. Take advantage when it's here, and to set expectations, it will be even longer before this kind of thing happens in the next cycle with Borderlands 4. Fans were, once again, not happy. Randy going full damage control, he doesn't realize he already fucked up. I was going to buy Borderlands 4, with this latest comment about $80 games, Borderlands 4 can go f itself. Hope it fails. You've got problems. Sorry for whatever happened in your life to lead you to where you are, where this seems to be like a good thing to post. Good luck. F you, you entitled prick. This is fun. F you, you bushy viper. I swear he is absolutely terrible at marketing. Why did this need to be said like this? Also, I thought you didn't have a say in pricing. I am not marketing. I'm trying to be helpful. I don't set pricing and did not even know about this sale before it was announced. However, I do know a lot about the macro games industry and business, and I have seen our games go through many cycles over many years. Cheers. I love Borderlands. I have 600 hours in Borderlands 1, 2,000 hours in Borderlands 2, and over 2,500 hours in Borderlands 3. I'm here to tell you to sit down and shut the f up, Randy. Please stop speaking on behalf of Borderlands before you finally kill it with your low IQ autistic failures to read the room. Dad BS, I'm 48, and even I find you cringe as f. For many, this came off as inherently greedy. Why would it not go on sale like this for much longer? Why would it not be on subscription services in the same amount of time? For fans, it was quite simple. More money. Taking the Nintendo approach of never lowering prices to always maximize profits from each new release. Amidst this controversy, there was another that was about to rear its ugly head. Borderlands 4 was reportedly going to be shipping with Denuvo Digital Rights Management, or DRM, software, and 2K's in-house anti-piracy and anti-cheat software. There were a few reasons that fans were upset about this. Denuvo had come under fire numerous times in the past for its negative effect on game performance and had been systematically shown to impact features such as load times and frame rates in particular games. In fact, Digital Foundry's Richard Ledbetter showed that Resident Evil Village performed noticeably better without Denuvo's DRM software active. Gamers are so adamantly opposed to such technology in games that when Denuvo started a Discord server to connect with their captive consumer, the feedback was so negative that they shut down the server before reinstating it with very limited lines of communication. Then there was the anti-piracy and anti-cheat software. With Gearbox now under new leadership due to the Take-Two acquisition in 2024, Take-Two put forth a new end-user licensing agreement, or EULA for short, asking players to conform to their new terms of service. The document and their accompanying privacy policy made clear statements that personal information could be accessed and retained under the new agreement, and in response, a mass review bombing over older Borderlands titles was undertaken in protest. Thousands turned out on Steam to reduce each game in the series' good standing into a deeply negative downturn. Players were turning out en masse to voice their protests over the EULA. The headline being printed across social media was that Borderlands had become corporate spyware, fueling the outcry even further. Speculation was that 2K's in-house software would be the vehicle through which Take-Two would be able to scrape this data and players' machines with kernel-level access. However, it was pointed out by prominent community members that perhaps this movement was driven by misinformation rather than credible concerns. Notable voice, Killer6, retorted that access was only permitted for personal info that was willingly given by the player, and any anti-cheat was geared towards their flagship title in GTA. There were also inclusions that pointed to penalizing and banning players for using mods, which brought more ire toward Gearbox, 2K, and Take-Two. Despite the fact that Take-Two were ultimately the custodians of the EULA, and were the ones who published their response to the outcry, providing a very clear and concise legal statement in opposition to the backlash. The modder, Epic, and NG, who famously was working on a revival of the long-dead Borderlands MMO, came forth with a video outlining his position as someone with deep knowledge of each game's codebase and functionality.
Does Borderlands contain spyware? The answer is no. There is no spyware in Borderlands. I personally have modded every Borderlands game and can confirm that the games contain no spyware anywhere. And yes, this also includes kernel-level access to your PC. It simply does not exist.
This view would be further compounded by other prominent figures creating content in support of this message.
Now, the thing about it is that would be all fine and dandy if you can prove that Borderlands uses a kernel anti-cheat, which it does not.
But for your average individual looking to purchase Borderlands 4 who had only seen the headlines, these controversies were just more fuel in the fire, and another in a growing set of reasons to steer away from purchasing the game. Regardless of your position on the topic, it was an incredibly bad look for Take-Two and the Borderlands franchise. Comparisons being drawn to organizations in poor standing with the gaming industry, including EA and Ubisoft. After all, anti-consumer practices of private data collection was a theme that was broadly being abused by corporate tech giants the world over. Through June, a suite of closed previews of the game saw content creators and media outlets get hands-on access to Borderlands 4, and across the board, the feedback was quite positive.
Overall, I enjoyed what I got to play. I'm going to be playing Borderlands at launch, and I look forward to grabbing some friends and just having a very fun time.
That's one of the things that I think makes Borderlands special and that people really connect with. And I was really pleased that it's all present here. It's really tight, and I had fun. I don't know what else to say. I had fun.
A hum of excitement compounded with affirmations from trusted community members meant that Borderlands 4, despite all the controversy, was shaping up to be a pretty well-received game. That's not to say that there wasn't constructive criticism. For example, many pointed out that the lack of a mini-map made traversal more confusing, replaced instead by a cluttered compass at the top of the screen. An obvious issue for sure, but not necessarily one to get overly upset over, with a strong possibility of a future adjustment to the game's UI. Despite the fact that these previews were only a few hours long, overall sentiment was positive and created an atmosphere of heightened anticipation as the release in September crept ever closer. Capitalizing on the goodwill that the game was being shown, on July 14th, Randy, the fifth horseman of the apocalypse, decided to take to Twitter with a further tease. The thread was actually very enlightening, a story about the design journey that Gearbox went through in developing Kairos with all of Borderlands 4's new traversal mechanics. The outcome was that in many places that would otherwise have been impossible to reach, then became accessible due to these new mechanics, and it was deemed that these spots of virgin soil would be the locations where the new Marcus bobblehead collectibles would be placed across the map, providing fans with both a new challenge and a suite of fun traversal puzzles. But Randy didn't stop there. Had it been left as a fun development tidbit to tease fans with and fuel speculation in the community, it probably would have been fine. Much to many players' shock and disappointment, Randy then finished the thread by posting the entire map of Kairos with every location of the collectibles included, essentially spoiling the challenge before the game had even been released. Now, of course, a low-resolution image on Twitter is not enough to locate and collect every bobblehead, but it definitely robbed the community of the joy of discovering this map on their own. Fans were once again quite unhappy with Randy. However, this would be only a small drop in favorable discourse around Borderlands 4 in the waning days before its release. Borderlands 4 successfully went gold on the 25th of July, a sure sign that the game wouldn't experience any delay in its launch despite the controversy surrounding it. Executive management were also very supportive of Gearbox and Borderlands 4's release. During August of 2025, Take-Two released their quarterly fiscal report, which stated that the franchise had sold 94 million units in its lifetime, the major contributors being Borderlands 2's selling 30 million copies and Borderlands 3 selling 23 million, making the majority of those overall sales numbers. Speaking to Insider Gaming on August 21st, Randy made the confident prediction that Borderlands 4 would be the title to finally push that number past the 100 million mark, which is likely the reason that his Twitter antics had not persuaded executive leaders at Take-Two to intervene with his unorthodox methods of community engagement. Rather than state any opposition, in fact, in an interview with IGN on the 8th of August, Strauss Zelnick, the chairman and CEO of Take-Two, publicly showed his support of Randy. I love Randy. First of all, let me just say that on record, and I love his big personality. I love his passion, and he is one of the all-time great game makers. He can also be controversial at times, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. I still love him to death. Borderlands will always be remembered as a franchise that is full of life. Its off-kilter moments are much like its patron CEO, colourful, eccentric, and at times, a little off-putting. Borderlands 4's legacy is one that will be defined by its success, but also by the passionate commentary around the story of its release, the contemporary discourse around the shift of the gaming industry towards pricier games at the hands of the ever-inflating budgets of the AAA space, even when there are plentiful examples to the contrary, proving to gamers and industry professionals that bigger budgets do not a great game make. The story of Borderlands 4's messy road to launch will always be remembered as a tale defined by its central character, Randy Pitchford, and the community's reactions to his unpredictable nature, closing the chapter on a piece of gaming history either best forgotten or left as a cautionary tale against the pitfalls of bad social media engagement, or perhaps the ill-fated consequences of the mad ramblings of a psycho relegated to making the same mistakes over and over, plunging deeper into the depths of self-inflicted insanity.